What's going on, everybody? This Afro Think Tank. I am alive, okay? I'm alive. I know some of you guys worried, was I alive? I didn't think I was going to be alive. Wasn't sure, right? You ever wanted to pull the plug, but there wasn't no damn plug to pull? Shit, I tell you what, man, I was looking for a plug. I couldn't find that motherfucker. That shit was hurt. All right? But, hey, veterans, listen, we continue to pay for this country. Listen, that's why I talk the shit and I earn the right. And a lot of us veterans, we earn the right because y'all have no idea the war does not end for the soldier when he comes home. Trust and believe, because we got a lifetime of problems for what we gave up, what we sacrificed for this country, all right? So I can talk all the shit I want. I earned the right, right? But so while I'm sitting here, right, you know, after I get my 2-3 sponge baths from a Nigerian, an Ethiopian, some form of Caribbean, and an African-American, thoroughly enjoyed it. You know, I paid for it, all right? Sponge bath, all right? You ain't never had no sponge bath? Let me tell you something. Okay? Yeah, I'm married, but goddamn it, it's part of this medical procedure, okay? It's sanctioned. Anyway. After that, you know what I'm saying? I'm sitting here since I'm not really cranking out videos because I'm, you know, trying not to die and all, right? And I'm saying, okay, well, once my, you know, stop being in, you know, level 9, level 10 pain, I start perusing on the internet. What else is there to do? I don't want to watch regular TV. Ain't nothing on there, right? So I see the Diaspora. I find the Diaspora is so funny, right? This video is about level 1, 2, and 3 consciousness, okay? So in the way we have these conversations online, all right? So level 1 is the FBA people, all right? Those are the emotional speakers, all right? They're not going to get past this essay. There's an essay I'll put together for you guys, all right? Level 1 won't get past essay, all right? Won't get past essay number 1. Level 2 will get past essay number 1. They'll get to level 2. They may stop at level 2. They may go to level 3. It's possible. But level 3 thinkers, they're going straight to level 3. And I know this. And if you tell me where you landed in the comment section at the end of this video, all right? Because it's nuts. You got O'Shea Dujack, a black African-American in Uganda. He in Africa, right? You know, he talking his trash, right? Then you got Nana Cuckoo. Well, am I saying that right? I don't know how to pronounce properly the names of the Guyanese, you know, pronunciation. But Nana, all right? Nana, all right? He in Texas, right? Talking trash about O'Shea. Then you got the British dude, right? Some Shaku, whatever, talking trash about O'Shea and talking about Austin Holloman. You got Austin Holloman going live 24 hours a day, right? Getting mad at everybody talking about him, like he don't understand why people talk about him, right? I mean, like, how you not understand? There's plenty of video, right? So I'm like watching. You got the guy from Ghana who left his own country to come to America, who talk shit and hate African Americans, but try to disguise it under some sort of, you know, high-minded conversation. You got the African American in Africa who seem to hate all the Africans, but really be doing like good stuff off the camera, but on camera he be going at them, pissing everybody off. And then you got a whole bunch of African, and I said this before, you got a bunch of African American content creators who got no talent, so they're in Africa. And all they can do is talk shit about Africa. It's like, damn, what you there for? Right? But then you got all the Africans, right, in America who living off the backs of African Americans talking shit about African Americans. Knowing they jealous of shit. Looking about as African American, dressing African American, all kind of shit, right? Then you got the black British dudes over there looking about as African American. They dress African American. Their style's African American. They talking shit about African Americans. Talking about, I don't trust no African American in Africa. I don't trust no black British person with a black British accent. All right, if that's the case. And here's the thing. Listen, I mean, that's not really true. I'm just saying it. But listen, there is no African, like, continental Africans need to realize you can't tell no African American that he can't go to Africa and do nothing. It's our birthright. You're not more African than us. You never will be more African than us. It's just that so you can think you can sit on your high horse, all your asses won't. But your ass is in Britain with a British accent talking shit. Shut up, right? And if your ass is African, you're in America talking shit, take your ass back to your country and go build some shit before you talk some shit, right? That's where there's different levels. You got a lot of egos at the bottom realms of discussions, right? So I just wanted to, for all those who's just wondering what the hell's going on, you see all this shit talking, but if you notice, there's nobody really, they're not really communicating. They're just jibber jabbing their egos, right? And hurting each other's feelings and going back and forth like children, like elementary school conversations, right? But then you got those who are having constructive conversations where, yeah, the egos may be involved, but they're trying to, you know, parse through their belief systems and parse through the things that they learn to dispel some things in order to get to the truth, right? Right? Then you got those ones that's high. I'm on level 3. Y'all know I'm level 3. High-minded, big thinker, understand that all the bullshit we be talking about is manufactured by the white man. So while the white man is sitting back, watching the whole African diaspora fight over the shit that they gave them to fight for, laughing in our faces, hoping that we continue to do it so we can slow down this black African progress that we got going on in this world. I'm just sitting here laughing like it's almost useless to argue with level 1. Your level 2 is worth it. Level 3 is where we all need to get. So this is going to be an essay. Enjoy it. It's very comprehensive. I put it together myself, right? And it should explain everything and how to get to the next level from the level. Anyway, you guys tell me what you think in the comment section. It's Afro Think Tank. Learn something, teach something. I'm out. All right. I already know I said goodbye, but I forgot some shit. You Africans who go to Britain, you British black people, and you continental Africans, y'all cannot take criticism. Because to be honest, a lot of the stuff that African Americans say about your countries are true. They may not know how to say it in a proper, respectful way, but it's damn true. And there's a lot of nukes African Americans are not dropping on African countries. I got some nukes on, and I love Nigeria, I know it. I got some shit I can say about Nigeria that will guarantee no African American ever goes to Nigeria after watching my video. And every single African American is seriously holding back of the debauchery that's going on in Africa. So a lot of you continental Africans that fled your countries, that went off to Britain, Canada, and y'all currently talking shit about African Americans for telling the truths, that you also tell the truths about your country, but you don't like it when we go over there and speak it to the mountaintops. You guys do not know how to take criticism, and that's why y'all got all y'all little panties in a bunch right now going after every African American content creator that's in Africa, exposing the truth about those African countries that you guys ran from when you went to America, the place that we built so that you can have success. I'm just letting y'all know. And y'all Africans, stop talking shit about the Jamaicans, because if it wasn't for the goddamn Jamaicans reminding African Americans that Africa is the motherland, all right, we'd be much further behind. Never disrespect the Jamaicans, because y'all doing that shit over there in the UK, and you guys are participating in Jamaican culture, participating in using their patois as slang, but you talk shit about Jamaicans. Some of y'all upsy-ditty ass Nigerians need to sit y'all asses down before you get really exposed. I swear, for Jesus. All right, let's get to the essay.
Level 1. Reactive Consciousness. The Psychology of Division, Identity, and Historical Illiteracy in the African World. By Afro Think Tank University, PhD level essay. Introduction. If one were asked what the greatest obstacle to Black liberation is today, many would immediately answer racism, colonialism, imperialism, capitalism, or economic inequality. Those are certainly important challenges. However, there is another obstacle that often receives less attention: the inability of oppressed people to accurately understand themselves, one another, and the historical systems that shape them. This is what we call Level 1 consciousness. Level 1 is not about intelligence, it is not about race, it is not about education level. Instead, it describes a way of processing information. A person may possess a college degree and still remain in Level 1. Likewise, someone with little formal education may move beyond it through disciplined study and critical thinking. Level 1 represents a mind that reacts before it investigates. Emotion comes before evidence. Identity comes before curiosity. Certainty comes before understanding. The nature of reactive consciousness. Reactive consciousness is built upon inherited narratives rather than investigated truth. Instead of asking, what actually happened? The Level 1 thinker asks, which story confirms what I already believe? This distinction is crucial. History becomes less about discovery and more about identity protection. Consequently, conversations become competitions rather than investigations. The purpose shifts from learning to winning, the colonial inheritance. One of the greatest misconceptions is believing that colonialism ended when European flags came down. Political colonialism largely ended. Psychological colonialism often remained. Colonial governments understood something modern psychology has repeatedly confirmed. People who control the narrative eventually influence behavior. European empires rarely relied only upon military power. They also controlled schools, churches, newspapers, museums, language, textbooks, maps, legal systems. The goal was never simply governing territory. The goal was governing imagination, divide and rule. Nearly every colonial empire employed some version of divide and rule. Instead of confronting one united population, they encouraged populations to compete. Examples include ethnic divisions, regional divisions, religious divisions, linguistic divisions, class divisions. When people compete against one another, they have less energy to challenge systems of domination. This principle was documented throughout British, French, Portuguese, Belgian, Spanish, Dutch, and other colonial administrations. Slavery and manufactured identity. The Atlantic slave trade fractured millions of families. People speaking hundreds of African languages were deliberately mixed together. Names disappeared, lineages disappeared, ethnic identities disappeared. New identities emerged under conditions of survival. Centuries later, African Americans, Jamaicans, Haitians, Brazilians, Cubans, and continental Africans developed distinct historical experiences. These experiences are real, yet many modern debates assume these differences resulted from personal choices rather than historical processes. This misunderstanding fuels unnecessary conflict. Identity before evidence. One defining characteristic of Level 1 thinking is identity protection. Psychologists describe this as identity protective cognition. People tend to reject evidence if accepting it feels like betraying their group. This phenomenon occurs across cultures, ideologies, and political movements. Within the African world, it may sound like, "My people would never," "Those people always," "They're all the same." Such statements reduce complex societies to stereotypes. Emotional reasoning. Level 1 discussions frequently substitute emotional certainty for historical investigation. Strong feelings become mistaken for strong evidence. Someone may sincerely believe something. That sincerity does not guarantee accuracy. Truth requires verification, not merely conviction. Confirmation bias. Human beings naturally search for information that confirms existing beliefs. This is called confirmation bias. Algorithms amplify it. Social media rewards outrage. Outrage increases engagement. Engagement increases advertising revenue. Therefore, the most emotionally provocative content often spreads the fastest. Level 1 consciousness becomes economically profitable. Social media as a psychological environment. Modern platforms rarely reward nuance. They reward certainty. Complex historical explanations often receive little attention. Simple accusations spread rapidly. Thus, people become increasingly confident while becoming less informed. Historical illiteracy. Historical illiteracy does not simply mean lacking facts. It means lacking context. Knowing slavery existed is not enough. Understanding how slavery shaped economics, law, migration, identity, education, and political institutions requires deeper study. Likewise, understanding colonial Africa requires examining taxation, labor systems, missionary education, language policy, artificial borders, indirect rule, resource extraction. Without context, history becomes mythology, trauma across generations. Historical trauma influences collective behavior. Communities remember victories. They also remember betrayal. Sometimes memories become generalized. Distrust spreads beyond its original context. Entire populations inherit suspicion without understanding its origins. This does not make the trauma imaginary. It means unresolved history continues influencing present relationships. The difference between knowledge and wisdom. Level 1 often mistakes information for understanding. Reading several books does not automatically produce wisdom. Wisdom emerges when facts become connected through critical thinking. Knowledge asks, "What happened?" Wisdom asks, "Why did it happen, and what can we learn from it?" Why Level 1 conversations become circular. Most online arguments never resolve because participants answer different questions. One argues emotionally, another argues historically, another argues politically, another argues economically. Without shared definitions, discussion becomes impossible. Everyone leaves believing they won. Nobody actually learned. Indicators of Level 1 consciousness. Common signs include speaking more than listening, certainty without evidence, reducing millions of people to stereotypes, assuming disagreement equals hostility, confusing criticism with hatred, prioritizing group loyalty over factual accuracy, rejecting uncomfortable evidence, valuing emotional victory over intellectual growth. The path toward Level 2. Growth begins with intellectual humility. The first breakthrough occurs when someone says, "Perhaps I don't know enough." That sentence changes everything. Curiosity replaces certainty. Questions replace accusations. History replaces rumor. Research replaces memes. Dialogue replaces shouting. Practical steps toward level 2. A person moves beyond reactive consciousness by intentionally changing how they learn. First, study multiple perspectives on the same historical event rather than relying on a single national or ideological narrative. Second, distinguish primary sources, such as speeches, letters, government records, newspapers, and archival documents, from modern commentary. Both have value, but they serve different purposes. Third, ask questions before making claims. A useful habit is to ask, what evidence would change my mind? If the answer is nothing, the discussion has become about identity rather than truth. Fourth, seek conversations with people whose lived experiences differ from your own. Listening does not require agreement, but it often reveals assumptions you did not realize you held. Fifth, recognize that social media rewards speed and certainty, while genuine historical understanding requires patience, context, and the willingness to revise one's views. Conclusion. Level 1 consciousness is not a permanent condition, it is a starting point. Every scholar, historian, and thoughtful leader has at some point held incomplete or mistaken ideas. What distinguishes intellectual growth is not never being wrong. It is the willingness to follow evidence wherever it leads. The transition to level 2 begins when a person stops asking, how do I defend what I already believe? And starts asking, what is the most accurate understanding of this issue, even if it challenges me? That shift transforms debate into inquiry, identity into understanding, and reaction into reflection. It is the foundation upon which deeper historical consciousness and ultimately level 3 solution-oriented mindset can be built. Level 2, Transitional Consciousness. The psychology of awakening, intellectual conflict, and the search for historical truth. By Afro Think Tank University, PhD level essay. Introduction. If level 1 consciousness is characterized by reaction, then level 2 consciousness is characterized by transition. It is the uncomfortable space between ignorance and wisdom, between certainty and understanding, between inherited narratives and independent investigation. It is perhaps the most psychologically difficult stage because it requires individuals to question beliefs that may have shaped their identity for decades. Unlike level 1, where people believe they already possess the truth, the level 2 thinker begins to recognize an unsettling possibility. Perhaps my understanding of history has been incomplete. This realization marks the beginning of intellectual maturity. However, it also creates confusion, internal conflict, and emotional instability, the crisis of consciousness. Every major intellectual tradition describes a period of awakening. Philosopher Socrates argued that wisdom begins when one recognizes the limits of one's own knowledge. The psychologist Jean Piaget described learning as a process of restructuring mental frameworks when new evidence challenges old assumptions. Historian Carter G. Woodson warned that education can become indoctrination when people inherit ideas without questioning them. Level 2 begins precisely at this point. Old mental models begin collapsing. New ones have not yet been fully constructed. The psychological conflict. Most people assume learning is pleasant. Real learning is often uncomfortable. Modern psychology calls this cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance occurs whenever deeply held beliefs collide with contradictory evidence. For example, someone raised believing all colonial governments were identical begins studying the differences between British indirect rule and French assimilation. Someone raised believing every African society was politically unified before European intervention begins learning about the diversity of pre-colonial kingdoms, alliances, and conflicts. Someone raised believing every disagreement within the diaspora is caused solely by modern social media begins discovering centuries of historical divergence. These discoveries do not weaken identity, they refine it. The collapse of simplistic narratives. Level 1 depends upon simple stories. Heroes, villains, good, evil. Level 2 introduces complexity. Complexity frustrates people because reality rarely fits into absolute categories. Instead of asking, who is right? The Level 2 thinker asks, what historical forces produce this situation? This shift transforms debates. Historical consciousness begins. At this stage, individuals recognize that history is not merely a sequence of dates. History becomes the study of systems. Questions become deeper. Why do different black populations describe race differently? Why did colonial governments educate Africans differently across empires? Why did Caribbean societies evolve differently than African American communities? Why do liberation movements produce different political outcomes? These questions cannot be answered with slogans. They require scholarship, the rediscovery of historical memory. Level 2 thinkers begin reconstructing historical memory. Rather than accepting national myths, they compare African history, African American history, Caribbean history, Afro-Latin history, indigenous histories, global colonial history. They recognize that each community experienced oppression differently. Different histories produce different identities. Different identities produce different political cultures. Understanding these differences becomes more important than judging them. The Pan-African experience. The early Pan-African movement provides an excellent historical example of Level 2 consciousness. Figures such as W.E.B. Du Bois, George Padmore, Amy Ashwood Garvey, Marcus Garvey, Kwame Nkrumah, and Jomo Kenyatta did not always agree. Their debates were often intense. They disagreed over strategy, economics, nationalism, socialism, federalism, cultural identity. Yet despite disagreement, they shared one characteristic. They believed serious questions deserved serious investigation. Dialogue replaced caricature, the danger of partial knowledge. One of the greatest dangers at Level 2 is overconfidence. Individuals often discover new information and mistakenly assume they have reached complete understanding. This phenomenon resembles what psychologists call the Dunning-Kruger effect. After leaving Level 1, people sometimes become evangelists for their newly discovered ideas. Instead of questioning everything, they simply adopt a different certainty. Growth slows. The emotional attachment to identity. Level 2 thinkers still struggle emotionally. Although they value evidence, identity remains deeply important. Discussions frequently become heated. Old wounds remain. Historical trauma still influences interpretation. This explains why productive conversations often end emotionally rather than intellectually. The evidence may be convincing. The emotions are still unresolved. Social media and the illusion of expertise. The digital age creates unprecedented access to knowledge. It also creates unprecedented access to misinformation. A person may watch several documentaries, read a few books, and suddenly believe themselves qualified to rewrite centuries of scholarship. Level 2 thinkers begin recognizing the difference between information, knowledge, understanding, wisdom. These are not identical. Comparative thinking. One hallmark of Level 2 is comparative analysis. Instead of asking, "Is this true?" they ask, "Compared to what?" For example, how did Portuguese colonialism differ from British colonialism? How did slavery differ in Brazil, Haiti, Jamaica, Cuba, and the United States? How did independence unfold differently in Ghana, Tanzania, Nigeria, Algeria, and Kenya? Comparison develops nuance. Nuance reduces prejudice, the development of intellectual humility. Perhaps the greatest achievement of Level 2 is humility. Humility is often misunderstood as weakness. In scholarship, humility is strength. It allows individuals to revise conclusions when better evidence emerges. The historian does not fear changing their mind. They expect it. Characteristics of Level 2 consciousness. Typical characteristics include: ask questions before making accusations, compares multiple historical perspectives, values evidence over slogans, recognizes propaganda exists on all sides, studies primary sources, acknowledges uncertainty, seeks dialogue rather than victory, respects lived experiences while recognizing their limits, distinguishes emotion from evidence, becomes increasingly comfortable saying, "I don't know." Why Level 2 can last for years. Many people remain in Level 2 for decades. Why? Because knowledge alone does not produce wisdom. A person may understand colonial history while still arguing from ego. A scholar may know hundreds of historical facts while remaining emotionally reactive. The transition from Level 2 to Level 3 occurs only when knowledge begins transforming character. The bridge to Level 3. Level 3 begins when individuals stop asking, "Who is correct?" and instead ask, "What solutions become possible if we understand the system correctly?" The focus changes. Conflict no longer becomes the destination, it becomes data. History becomes a laboratory. Instead of merely exposing problems, individuals begin designing institutions. schools, businesses, research centers, economic partnerships, cultural exchanges, educational media, public policy. Knowledge becomes action. Practical steps toward level 3. Moving beyond level 2 requires more than reading books. It requires applying knowledge in ways that benefit others. First, connect history to present-day institutions. Ask not only what happened, but how those historical patterns still shape education, economics, media, and politics today. Second, cultivate emotional discipline. Being informed does not automatically make conversations productive. Learn to pause, listen, and respond with evidence rather than reacting to perceived insults. Third, collaborate across differences. Seek projects with people from other parts of the African world. Shared work often builds trust more effectively than endless debate. Fourth, create solutions. Write, teach, mentor, build businesses, support cultural exchanges, and develop educational resources. The purpose of knowledge is not simply to critique the world, it is to improve it. Fifth, maintain intellectual humility. Every new discovery should expand your curiosity, not inflate your certainty. Conclusion: Level 2 consciousness is the bridge between inherited beliefs and genuine historical understanding. It is the stage where certainty gives way to inquiry, where identity becomes informed by evidence rather than assumption, and where the pursuit of truth begins to outweigh the desire to win arguments. Yet level 2 is not the destination, it is preparation. The ultimate purpose of learning is not to become the most knowledgeable person in the room. It is to become the kind of person who can transform knowledge into wisdom, cooperation, and institution building. Only then does historical awareness mature into level 3 consciousness, where understanding is measured not only by what one knows, but by what one helps build for future generations. Level 3. Historical consciousness. The Psychology of Wisdom, Systems Thinking, and Civilizational Reconstruction. By Afro Think Tank University, PhD level essay. Introduction. Level 3. Consciousness is not the end of learning, it is the beginning of leadership. If level 1 is characterized by reaction, and level 2 by investigation, then level 3 is characterized by construction. At this stage, knowledge has matured into wisdom. History is no longer merely remembered, it is applied. The level 3 thinker understands that civilizations are not rebuilt through endless arguments. They are rebuilt through institutions, through education, through economics, through science, through technology, through family, through culture, through cooperation. The question changes from who is to blame to what must be built. This is the defining characteristic of historical maturity, beyond identity politics. Level 3 thinkers recognize that identity has value, identity preserves memory, culture preserves belonging, history preserves continuity. Yet identity alone cannot build civilization. Civilizations are built through institutions, schools, banks, universities, research centers, businesses, libraries, museums, governments, scientific laboratories, engineering firms, cultural academies. The level 3 thinker understands that communities rise or decline according to the quality of the institutions they create. Systems thinking. Perhaps the greatest intellectual shift occurring at level 3 is the transition from event thinking to systems thinking. Level 1 asks, who insulted whom? Level 2 asks, why did this happen? Level 3 asks, what system keeps reproducing this outcome, instead of focusing only upon individual incidents? Level 3 examines educational systems, financial systems, legal systems, media systems, political systems, technological systems, because systems produce patterns. Patterns produce outcomes. Changing individual opinions matters. Changing institutions changes generations. The long view of history. Level 3 thinkers stop measuring success by weeks, or elections, or social media trends. They begin thinking in centuries. Ancient Egypt was not constructed in one generation. Great Zimbabwe was not built in one decade. The University of Timbuktu did not become a center of scholarship overnight. Civilizations emerged through cumulative effort. The level 3 thinker asks, what can I contribute that will still matter 100 years from now? Historical models of level 3. History offers many examples of leaders who embodied this mindset. Booker T. Washington focused on institution building through education and economic development at Tuskegee. Sheikh Anta Diop dedicated his career to reconstructing African history through linguistics, archaeology, and scientific inquiry. Thomas Sankara promoted literacy, public health, environmental restoration, and self-reliance in Burkina Faso. Julius Nyerere emphasized education and national cohesion in Tanzania. Each chose to build rather than merely criticize. Their methods differed. Their shared commitment was long-term development, wisdom versus information. Modern society often confuses information with intelligence. Information answers questions. Wisdom asks better questions. A wise person understands that every historical event contains multiple causes. No serious historical problem has only one explanation. Level 3 rejects simplistic narratives. Reality is understood as interconnected. Economics influences politics. Politics influences education. Education influences culture. Culture influences identity. Identity influences institutions. Everything is connected. Emotional mastery. One of the defining characteristics of Level 3 is emotional discipline. This does not mean becoming emotionless. It means refusing to allow emotion to replace analysis. The Level 3 thinker can hear criticism without becoming defensive, can encounter disagreement without becoming hostile, can revise opinions without feeling defeated. Intellectual humility becomes permanent. From historical memory to historical responsibility. Knowing history creates responsibility. Learning about colonialism should inspire institutional development. Learning about slavery should inspire educational excellence. Learning about exploitation should inspire economic independence. History becomes a teacher rather than a prison. The purpose of remembering suffering is not perpetual anger. It is preventing repetition. Building bridges across the African world. Level 3 thinkers understand that every African-descended community carries unique historical experiences. African Americans, Continental Africans, Afro-Caribbeans, Afro-Latin Americans, Black Europeans. Each possesses distinct strengths. Rather than asking which experience is superior, they ask, what can each contribute? Diversity becomes an asset rather than a source of division. Leadership as service. Leadership at Level 3 is measured differently. Not by followers. Not by popularity, not by social media engagement. Leadership is measured by what remains after one's lifetime. Institutions, scholarship, students, businesses, communities, families strengthened, ideas preserved, future generations empowered. The greatest leaders plant trees whose shade they will never personally enjoy. Economic consciousness. History repeatedly demonstrates that political freedom without economic capacity remains fragile. Therefore, Level 3 integrates history, economics, science, technology, education, entrepreneurship. Financial literacy becomes liberation. Ownership becomes strategy. Innovation becomes survival. Civilizations capable of producing knowledge also produce prosperity. Characteristics of Level 3 consciousness. Individuals operating at this level generally demonstrate the following qualities. Think in generations rather than news cycles. Seek truth even when it challenges personal identity. Study systems rather than isolated events. Build institutions instead of merely criticizing institutions. Transform historical knowledge into practical action. Value cooperation over ideological purity. Mentor younger generations. Encourage intellectual diversity while maintaining shared goals. Practice emotional discipline. Measure success by legacy rather than recognition. Remaining humble. Ironically, one hallmark of Level 3 is recognizing that there is no final level of knowledge. The more one learns, the more one discovers how much remains unknown. Curiosity never ends. Scholarship never ends. Civilizational development never ends. Wisdom is not certainty. Wisdom is disciplined curiosity sustained over a lifetime. The mission of Level 3. Ultimately, Level 3 asks one question. How can my knowledge improve the lives of people who will never know my name? That question transforms education into service, knowledge into responsibility, history into purpose. Final conclusion. From reaction to reconstruction. The journey from Level 1 to Level 3 is more than an intellectual progression. It is a transformation in how a person understands themselves, their community, and their responsibility to history. At Level 1, individuals inherit narratives and often react from emotion, identity, and incomplete historical understanding. Conversations become contests and energy is consumed by division. At level 2, curiosity begins to replace certainty. People question inherited assumptions, compare perspectives, and recognize the complexity of history. This stage is often uncomfortable because it requires confronting long-held beliefs, yet it is essential for genuine intellectual growth. At level 3, knowledge matures into wisdom. The focus shifts from exposing problems to solving them, from winning debates to building institutions, and from protecting ego to serving future generations. History is no longer merely studied, it becomes a guide for creating schools, businesses, research centers, cultural organizations, and systems that strengthen communities. The central lesson of this framework is that historical consciousness is not measured by how much information a person can recite, but by the quality of their thinking and the value they create for others. The ultimate goal is not to produce people who know more facts than everyone else. The goal is to cultivate men and women who think critically, listen carefully, collaborate across differences, and dedicate their knowledge to the long-term flourishing of the African world and humanity as a whole. A civilization rises when enough of its people move beyond reaction, embrace disciplined inquiry, and commit themselves to building a future worthy of those who came before them and those who will come after them. Knowledge begins the journey. Wisdom guides it. Institution building secures it. Legacy completes it.
Don't quit for a nigga. You about to be where you need to be. You talking about some, maybe I should throw in the towel. No, for a nigga. Don't ever quit. I keep going.
I'm with the niggas tonight, and it feels alright. I'm with the niggas tonight, and it feels alright. I'm with the niggas tonight, and it feels alright. I'm with the niggas tonight, and it feels alright.
What is that? I don't know. What is that? That's open. Oh, it's a goblin. It's nasty.
Free Sudan! Boycott diamonds and gold! Free Sudan! Boycott diamonds and gold! We most definitely cannot forget about the people of Sudan!
Thanks for watching Afro Think Tank. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And follow me on Substack and Patreon for more content. Remember, it's Pan-Africanism or nothing.